Okay. Okay, we're doing question number 48 in our James book, and it's regarding James 4, verses 7 and 8. James 4, verses 7 and 8. So the question is, how can we live for God and escape living for the devil? How can we live for God and escape living for the devil? Okay, so the answers are: go to live in a Christian commune, resist the devil and draw nigh to God, avoid temptation. Okay, so James 4, 7 and 8 says, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. I want to make a special note of being double-minded. Okay. Okay, so the answer obviously should be resist the devil and draw nigh to God, because that's exactly what it says. But as we look at, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but as we look at the other answers, go to live in a Christian commune or avoid temptation. Now, going to live in a Christian commune sounds, kind of odd, doesn't it? Who would do that? The Shakers did that. Okay, the Shaker communities were designed just that way. It was essentially living in a commune, and they frowned upon marriage because people should be so devoted to God that they would be serving Him. Now, if you are married already, Nancy, I cannot remember. I think that they might have separated in the commune. Do you remember anything about that at all in the Shaker communities? Yeah, and who were already married going into the community. Yeah, I think so too. So, yeah, that's how literally that was community, how they died off, contributed to that. But they're not the only community that has ever done that, a Christian community. You think of the rise of monasticism, I think around the 900s AD, as you had, for instance, in the Catholic Church before that, you would have married priests. This was not unheard of. This was something that was not unpopular to do. But specifically, as you had those who were leaving to the monastic community, largely for education purposes. I mean, these were like your colleges back at the time. The idea of being in a monastic order, being a monk, grew more popular. And so it might sound odd to talk about going to live in a Christian commune, but that's exactly what was happening in many forms. And then you would have over in Buddhist societies, they would have monks that would rise up and live an ascetic life. In fact, asceticism was something that was popular. We think of Martin Luther, who had been in a monastery, and how he would beat himself, and they would do this kind of thing in order to punish themselves for being such sinners and trying to get closer to God. So trying to get closer to God and trying to get away from everything is really not the answer. This is not the answer. Number one, when people would go into those communes, they were sinners too, and they would have their sins rise up. If you ever found a perfect church, don't go to it because you don't want to ruin it. However, nobody else is there anyhow because there are no perfect people there. This sort of goes along with the idea of, as we were talking about on Sunday, about how within the Methodists and then on to the holiness movement, the idea of getting entire sanctification. People want to get away from sin and get away from temptation. And I think that's a fine idea, okay, to get away from sin. but separating yourself to where you're a hermit is not the answer. And if you look up hermits, you can see across history how there were holy men who lived as hermits. They were not only in a Christian commune, actually they were in a Christian union, I guess. There was no to the commune. They would live in a cave somewhere. Again, hopefully that they could really reach out to God. And it reminds me of a joke that was told about a pastor who was really wanting to get close to God, and he would climb up into the steeple, and there he would, trying to get closer to God and saying, "God, where are you? Where are you?" And God was calling down from below, "I'm here amongst the people." Okay, get down to the people. Nancy, yes.
Yeah, avoiding temptation is the right idea, but any notion that goes to extremes
Yes.
becomes unbiblical, because we are called to be light and salt to an unsaved world. And if you are secluded and insulated in your own little community that you think is happy land, you're never going to be able to get the gospel out to people who need to hear it.
Yeah, and this is bring up a flood of thoughts. I hope I can remember them all. Yeah, sometimes people will say, "Oh yeah, I'll go out and evangelize, but I don't want to know other people." Okay, it can be painful. My answer to that is get over it. Okay, get over it. People laugh. It's my common joke when I talk about being a shy person, but I'll acknowledge it's something I got trained out of long ago, and you just have to do it. And so the answer is not avoid. The answer is to go out. Just as Jesus came down into the world, and stop to think about that. Okay, if he wanted to, he who is so holy and being part of the Godhead, where you have these seraphims in Isaiah chapter 6 with wings, 2 wings covering their faces, 2 wings covering their feet, and 2 wings flying. They couldn't even stand on the ground. Okay, and they had to keep their feet covered to be holy, and they couldn't see things. They had, the wings covering their faces, and their whole cry was holy, holy, holy. Okay, so when we think about God and His holiness being so apart from sin and so separated from sin, because that's what holy means, right? Is to be separated. For Him to come down into the world, it should be something that He has modeled for us, that we have got to go into the world too. If you want to fix the sewer, you got to step down into it, and you gotta be able to last in it. So going to the commune is and trying to be separate and saying, "Oh, I don't want to be touched by sin." No, we have to go out to sinners. And it's going to be painful, and it's going to be dirty, and it's going to be depressing, and they're going to say no. Sometimes they're going to say yes, and that's where there's cause for our rejoicing. And if you've been around somebody who was responding to you spiritually, can you imagine the joy in heaven that the Bible talks about, rejoicing in heaven, when somebody comes to salvation? How much more do they even have it? No, if you want the joy, you've got to do the work. Let me get Joe in just a moment. This reminds me of a whole philosophy of ethics that where, in fact, this is a common principle in worldly ethics, is that which is good is that which is pleasurable. Now, the one group of people that would hold to that would say, well, we have to maybe go through some hard times in order to get the pleasure, but that's worth it then. No, we're not looking for the pleasure. We're looking for the opportunity to serve. And it means that we have to go through the work. Brother Joe, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you said that, Jesus came down and He walked among sinners, and He did, to the point that He was falsely accused sometimes of actually committing sin, because He was so involved with sinners. But He said,
"Oh yeah."
So it was, it's important for us to know, not that we should be partaking in anybody's sin, but if that were the case, then like you said, Jesus would have just stayed where he was before he came here, because that would have been the example of don't mix with sinners. Now we don't mix with them in that we do what they're doing, but we have to be amongst them to be able to witness to them and to share with them. And like I said, he was accused of said, well, he's with the sinners. They accused him of being a glutton and a wine bibber. Yeah. And so he definitely was, involved with people so much to the fact that people were falsely accusing him of participating in the sin.
Yeah, yeah. And as human beings, we tend to want to reduce things down to simple rules so we can remember them. Okay? And so the idea of, oh, let me stay away from sin and temptation, that seems like such a good idea. Okay, in an organic setting where you have so many things going on in life, nothing is ever so simple, except us who try to simplify things down. Okay? No, we can maybe try to avoid temptation, as Nancy said, in an extreme kind of way. No, we need to not reduce things down to that and be extreme and say, oh, I got to stay away from everything. No, what we got to do is grow in our skills. As hard as that is, we got to do it in order to mix and be able to minister to people. We're not allowed the luxury of retreating into our shells. Okay, it's not allowed. The scripture says, preach the word, be instant in season and what? Out of season too. Okay, as difficult as it is. Miss Nancy, some more there.
Yeah, avoiding it is good, but it's kind of passive.
Right.
Resisting the devil, which the Bible tells us expressly to do, suggests a proactive, deliberate decision where there are temptations around you and you are going to say no, you are going to stay pure, you are going to look to God to strengthen you and plow through that while you spread the gospel.
Yeah.
And not even allow, because we think of sin a lot of times as something that we actively do, which is true, but then we forget that allowing ourselves to be bogged down with wrong attitudes is also sinful.
Yeah, bring it closer to your mouth there.
And when people come against us as believers, we could get defeated, we could feel discouraged, we could just feel like that's it, I'm never going to try that again because this hurts too much. But we have to resist the temptation to be self-focused and instead to say, Lord, help me to get past this and help me to just press on serving you. Yeah. Because all of us get hurt. All
Amen.
Of us have situations where people misunderstand us. They lie about us. They try to defeat us in some way. They plot against us. I mean, I used to have this happen all the time at work. Employees actually plotting against me or trying to make my job as difficult as possible or trying to make me look bad to the boss or to the patients. And you can't just keep quitting jobs because these things happen. Although some workplaces are more hostile than others, God placed us there to be a testimony to those people at that time. Yeah. So we really have to resist the temptation to get into ourselves and into our own heads to the point where we're ineffective. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, that's more like a determined action than just avoiding. Yeah, let me call on Donna in just a moment. Let me say, this happens to us all the time. I mean, you would not know that regularly in services, I mean, I could talk about, got hurt several times on Sunday morning, okay? You wouldn't be able to figure it out, and I'm not going to tell you, okay? Because my sights have got to be set on that sermon. I got to be focused to be able to preach that thing, and that's where the focus is on. Before calling Donna there in just a moment, I want to say that this avoid temptation, that's one of those almost right answers. So I like to do that an awful lot. Just about every question has an almost right answer. Avoiding temptation seems like a good idea, except in 1 Corinthians 5, 9-10, it says, I wrote unto you in an epistle not to company with fornicators,
Yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or with idolaters, for then must ye needs go out of the world. Okay, the only way you could avoid the temptation is to go out of the world. Miss Donna, let you share before I go on.
A lot of times when I'm witnessing and people reject
Yeah.
what I'm saying, I
Feels good, doesn't it?
I have to remember that they're not rejecting me, they're
Right.
rejecting Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
And in that way, I feel very sad for them,
Yes.
not for me.
That is the appropriate response, is like, oh, you're not hurting me with your stupid words because I know you're not smart enough to know what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, you're only really hurting yourself. You're only digging yourself in deeper. And when I say they're not smart enough, I mean, they don't have the arguments. They've not gone through them like we have, learning about all these things. And they might think that they're very clever. And we're looking at them and we're thinking, you're shallow. Okay. Your arguments are really shallow. And so it's definitely not a reflection on us. It's a reflection on themselves and what they're going through. I want to point out in the scripture verse in James chapter 4, it says, not just resist the devil and he will flee from you. It starts off with, submit yourselves therefore to God. And then verse 8, draw nigh to God and he will draw nigh to you. This is often referred to as a replacement strategy. You not only just sit down beside the temptation and say, I'm not thinking about it, I'm not thinking about it, I'm not thinking about it. No, you got to think about something else. Okay? And this is something I commonly tell people. I mean, within the last 2 weeks, I think I've counseled 2 people on this. As often as you're going to church, and as often as you are coming to prayer meeting, as often as you are serving God, helping out with things, you can't do 2 things at one time. You're not doing the thing that's tempting you. Okay, so there's a logic to that. That's replacement, where we build up the strength for the other. Otherwise, if we were to avoid all the fornicators that are out there and the covetous and everything, we'd have to leave the world. We'd have to leave the world. So what we need to do is draw nigh to God. Now, if you would, think of ways that, and if I can get some volunteers right now, put on your thinking caps and then ask, well, and these are common ways. This is not, you don't have to be very clever about it. What are the common ways that we can draw nigh to God? Okay, you got to have a microphone. They can't hear you at home. Okay, they're not able to, turn the microphone on first. Okay, it works better that way.
Read the word.
Read the word, yeah. Yeah, I had somebody, one of the kids asked me about their reading schedule, and I was explaining, okay, there are a couple of different kinds of reading because I was doing study at the same time. I said, you might study some. I said, other times you can just read just for the sake of reading. You will get somewhere by doing that as you do it over and over again. It will have its effect. And then, because he was thinking, well, how much should I study? And like, okay, sometimes not at all, and sometimes yes. Okay. Another way that we can draw nigh to God, Miss Nancy.
Pray and witness.
Pray and witness. Oh, and praying is especially important. The witnessing is especially important. Anytime we're talking about the gospel, anytime we're talking, period, is when we are really getting our thoughts in order. And when you've got to explain, a lot of people, they know the gospel, they've experienced the gospel, they've gotten saved. But if you go to talk about it, it's a totally different story. And as you're starting to answer questions, now you're really thinking about it, because you're thinking, okay, I got to cover this and I can't say that, and I got to make sure I'm logical so that I don't sound like I'm doing a word salad like some politician. Okay? So yeah, you're drawing nigh to God that way. Another way that we might draw nigh to God, Brother Joe.
Yeah, with today's technology, you can listen to good preaching and good teaching even when you're not in church.
Yes, there are. Whenever I listen to podcasts of preaching, I have to put it on 1.5 speed. Okay, I listen fast, so I got to make them talk faster. But sometimes what I'll do on my walk is I'll try to have a podcast that I'm listening to while I'm walking. Okay, yeah. Somebody else has got an idea. Miss Nancy, yeah.
If you have any extra time, you can volunteer to do something at church.
Yes, yes. Volunteering at church. And I'm going to give us a verse on that. Let me get Maya first, though.
You can sing hymns unto the Lord.
You can sing hymns. You know, one of the nice things about hymns is that a lot of us probably can at least remember one of the first verse of a lot of hymns. And so there's that. You might even get a hymnal and then, pick up some hymn singing. Have a variety of things. Anything else to add on? Miss Nancy? We could probably go on for 50, 60 things, but we'll probably get some good basic ones just in our thinking alone here.
I know we talked about reading the Word, and that's definitely something that we need to do every single day. But if we're walking around doing things, we can also put our cell phones on so that the Bible is actually read aloud to us while we're doing things. You can really never get enough of God's Word into you. And every once in a while, something will pop as you're listening that's really just what you needed. Or maybe you didn't realize that that was actually in the Bible put just that way.
Yeah.
And the thing about witnessing, I remember when I was a new Christian, I wanted to tell everybody about Christ. I was very zealous, but I was concerned that I didn't know enough about the Bible. But God knew who was going to cross my path. And in his infinite wisdom, he would have people that were ripe for the gospel, or people that asked me questions that would cause me to go do research or to look something up or to ask my pastor. But I needed all of that sharpening, and those people needed the pebble in their shoe of the gospel, the ones who didn't respond positively. So we shouldn't let that hold us back, because that's a tool of the enemy too. I mean, in the early days, we used to have teams of women go out while the men babysat our little kids. And this one very old believer answered the door to one of our ladies, and he didn't let on that he was a Christian at first. But he was like an old, bitter guy. And he asked her some hard spiritual, like a theological concept, and she wasn't sure what to do with it. And then he reamed her out for not knowing, and then revealed he was a Christian and that she shouldn't be trying to spread. And that really discouraged her for a long time from going out. And again, a tool of the enemy. And we really had to walk that back with her over and over to say, look at the Samaritan woman, how she got saved and instantly started witnessing. God doesn't expect you to be an encyclopedia of Bible knowledge. Right. Just share what he did for you. That's all he expects us to do. So this is something that we shouldn't allow the enemy to hold us back, because God knows who's going to be in our path, even as we give out tracts. God knows who we work with. God knows who our neighbors are. And he arranges divine appointments. Mm-hmm. So I just thank and praise him for that, because we're never going to know enough. We're never going to be able to answer every question, so we can't be held back by that.
Yeah. One of my go-to verses, and I'd always have to look this up, and I thought, I got to get this passage, the reference to it, Proverbs 16:3, and I got them connected. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. You might not have the thoughts, but you're going to get them as you are serving God, because now you got to think about them. And I want to, before I call on Brother Joe, I want to point out that the Scripture says in James 4, verse 8, it says, "Purify your hearts, ye double-minded." Double-minded. One of the things that I stress now also is that we can direct our mind. We can choose that. We might not feel like it. We might be depressed over it. Hey, we're human. I mean, Elijah, what did he do when Jezebel was after him? He ran. I mean, he had just, called fire down from heaven. But what does he do now? He runs. And he was depressed, and God nurtured him and fed him, and then he gave him some help to go with that. Yeah, we're human too. But what we can do is we can direct our thoughts, and we can work on it, and we can change our mind. We can change our mind. And a lot of it has to do with the replacement stuff and letting things grow because we've exercised ourselves. And people, they exercise themselves all the time. We're all doing it. And you got people doing muscle building, and they're going with a keto diet, and they're doing all kinds of things. Okay, well, we need to do that spiritually as well. Brother Joe, yeah.
Yeah, I was just kind of going to sort of augment what Miss Nancy said. Yeah, and what you said too. It's important for us to witness for God. And I think one of the mistakes that we can make is that we think that if we don't have the answer to every question, we're not going to be an effective witness.
Right.
And it's a few things to that is, well, first of all, of course, no one has all the answers. And if a person is truly looking for answers, one of the answers that they will accept is, well, you know what? I don't have the answer to that right now. That's a good question. Let me look into it and I'll get back to you. And that's a perfectly legitimate answer. And if a person truly wants to know, they say, okay. And then, but if they're just looking to try to stump you because they're trying to justify their, ungodly or lifestyle or just rejecting God outright, then it doesn't matter how many questions you answer. So you're just spinning your wheels. But the other thing I wanted to say to that is that there really aren't as many questions as we think. People are asking the same questions over and over and over. It's a small body of questions. Now, sometimes they're packaged a little differently, but basically the crux of those questions are basically the same. So if we can zone in on like the most commonly asked questions, we're going to be okay in most of our witnessing without having to, do any extra research. So that leads me to my other thing that we can do to be, more godly is to also read apologetics and other material like that, and be ready for those kinds of questions when they do arise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to say, but the experience that we have around here, I love some of the questions that are being asked. I got asked a question today, and had a nice beefy question, and we got to talk about it. And then, one of the first things that Emmanuel does when I pick him up, okay, and I'm trusting that Emmanuel's listening and how much I like this. As I do my teen pickup thing, gets in the car, hands me a paper. Okay, it's his study for the week, and he has I'm going to share this one. I haven't shared this one yet, and Emmanuel will remember this. But he was studying about the woman who brought her son, and he was possessed of a demon. And normally, and I pointed this out to him as I read his thing there, normally the thing that people get, respond to is, oh, well, what about why the apostles couldn't cast this demon out? What is it about demonism we need to know about this? And this kind cometh not out but by prayer and fasting. And that's the thing. So people want to talk about prayer and fasting. And something I like to point out when you see the demonic activity is how demonic activity is always hurting people. Think about transgenderism, okay, and how this demonic force is really working on these young people and trying to essentially cast them into the fire, cut themselves with stones. But what he identified, and Emmanuel, I like this an awful lot. What he identified was the guy's mother brought him to Jesus. Now would we focus on that angle? Okay, no, we might focus on the other angles. No, his mother brought him to Jesus, and that would be a sermon in itself. Okay. Remember, with a lot of the miracles that were performed, the miraculous event is generally not the real lesson. It's what's going around it. It's why it's there is really more the lesson. So, so yeah, as we go to share things with each other, then our minds are being reshaped. And the questions, yeah, there are the dumb questions that are out there in the world that people latch onto and think that they're so clever with. Kids across campuses were waking up to an awful lot of things as the speakers besides Charlie Kirk have been going out there, and they've got some great answers that they're sharing with people. We want to remember that as we're talking to people, that there's just a richness and a depth to what we can see, and that's all feeding our minds and getting us involved. Remember, this is why people are sharing in these answers here, because I know you already know this. It's making you think. It just does. That's the way it goes. Okay, and speaking, we have 8:35 now. So let me ask if there's anything from home that anybody would like to add. Okay, well then we're going to go ahead and pray, and we're going to look forward to a Sunday where we're going to see another preacher. It'll be quite refreshing. It'll be a nice change of pace to have that. It's always a blessing to have that, and I'm positive that just his differentness will be something that will really lift us up. So let's pray for everybody for that.